Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. This week, Jason Griffing joins us from Littleton, Colorado, where he is Director of Product at OneVision Resources. Jason and I have known each other for quite a while, first as fellow guests on AV Nation's Resi Week podcast, while he was Director of Business Development for the custom integration company Harrison Home Systems. Then he moved on from there and through the ranks at OneVision, the company that has made an art out of outsourced remote service for the CI channel. OneVision has a new service called ProVision that we're going to learn a little bit more about in our conversation. Jason will walk us through the concept behind the new service and how custom integrators can use it to develop a clearer pathway towards selling service plans to their clients and establishing recurring monthly revenue. Jason Griffing, great to see you again. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You and I are podcasters extraordinaire, much more veteran from your side. You've been doing podcasting forever. You kind of took a pause on that recently, but I am expecting the best quality audio, and we're going to totally match with our bald heads, our dark glasses, and our dark shirts.
Yeah, we got our outfit. We got our outfit coordination dialed in today, so we'll see if we can match that on the audio and production side.
There you go. Right. Well, you and I, we did speak recently because you reached out about this ProVision introduction and wanted to give me just a little bit of a brief on it before the press release came out. And as you know, I had Joey Kolczynski, the OneVision Resources founder, on our podcast earlier in the year. And we did the full story, the background story of how he came up with OneVision and where his background was. And so we don't need to go completely full origin story of OneVision, but I'm sure there are plenty of people that didn't get a chance to catch up on that one. So we'll touch on some of that as we talk. But then I also wanted to just get to know you better, as I do on these podcasts. I was surprised at how many different really well-known integration companies that you have worked with in your career throughout the Western U.S. And these are just sort of the name brands that I know out there. Could you walk us through just a little bit of that career path? And well, just what was your first integration company that you worked for?
Yeah, I was initially up here in Colorado, up in the Vail Valley, probably early 2000s. It would be roughly the timeline here. And at the time, I was working for a company that did live audio for big like conferences and conventions inside of a hotel up there. That job, for various reasons, just was no longer sort of satisfying me at the time. And I started looking around the Vail Valley to find other opportunities. And there was a small company up there in the Vail Valley at the time doing this stuff. They were called Current Technologies. I'm actually candidly not sure if they're still around. It's a pretty small business. But they were the first ones to sort of take a chance on me with no experience in the home integration industry. They took a small chance on me and brought me on, and that was really where it all started. So I started, pulling the wires around in the crawl spaces and doing pre-wires and things like that. Pretty quickly moved up to trim work and finish work in the racks and things of that nature. And then shortly after that, life took me out to Southern California. Okay. Where I lived for about 7 or 8 years and really had some awesome opportunities to work with some great companies out there, including Roberts Home Audio, as well as DSI right around the time that they became part of VIA. So I was part of the whole VIA experiment, which was really, we all know how that ended, but it was a great experience for me and I really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, that was, those are two really, yeah, those two Southern California companies are super well respected. And of course, the VIA thing, I'd like to maybe just dive into that a little bit in a minute, but that transition from doing corporate event, live performance, live presentation type AV, that seems like a kind of a good transition to custom. How did you even find out about this industry? Were you aware of CI before you got that first job in it?
Yeah, not really. I was actually just online looking at different job sites, and I don't remember sort of what search terms I was using or anything specifically like that. But, I was just poking around the internet at the time looking for jobs related to audio and technology. And I stumbled across this listing for that company in the Vail Valley. And I thought, hey, that sounds really cool, and I started digging into the internet and just looking at all of the cool things that people were doing inside of homes. And I thought, what a great match for my passions and where I want to be. In college, I'd done an interdisciplinary studies degree, which was basically a program that they had at the University of Northern Colorado, where you could essentially build your own degree. There was a lot of parameters, and you had to go through an approval process, and it was pretty rigorous. But the degree that I put together was audio engineering and business administration. So I just knew that I really enjoyed audio, I really enjoyed technology, and I also have always had kind of an entrepreneurial business streak in me. And so the opportunity to mesh those together was great, and I took advantage of that. So when I found the home technology business and saw all of the cool things that were happening inside of the homes, I thought, what a great synergy. And I think I'm not terribly unique. Like, I've talked to a lot of people in the industry who sort of came up through this similar live audio or audio engineering background and ended up here in the CI channel.
What roles you played? All the roles that seem to come along as you work your way up through the ladder at a CI company. What would you say was the sweet spot of what you felt more inclined to enjoy or were good at?
Yeah, the sweet spot for me was definitely project management. So like I said, I started out like most of us doing the pre-wires and things like that, and then got into finish and trim work. That eventually led me into programming, which I did for a number of years. I was a Savant programmer back in the early days of Savant for several years when I was working there at Roberts, but eventually got into doing project management. And I think that was where I really hit my stride. It was just a great fit for the way that I work. I'm kind of a stickler for details. I'm hyper organized and really just enjoyed the process of becoming a project manager and really seeing projects through this kind of from that early stage of it's really, it's just an idea on a piece of paper, right? It's a proposal, it's a bill of materials, and it's sort of this concept in people's minds and bringing it from that abstract concept to reality and getting to see and be involved in all of the phases along the way really suited my taste. So yeah, definitely project management was where I hit my stride in the industry. Also did a number of years after that doing more like operational management, even tried my hand at sort of business development and sales, had some moderate success there, but it wasn't really a great fit, I found, for my personality. I didn't wake up every day and find myself excited to go do sales the same way that I did with project management and sort of operations. So that was really where I kind of staked my claim.
I can see how I think that would probably be the role that I would, if I ever did end up working for a custom integration firm. And I briefly considered it when I was in between magazine gigs, but honestly, the pay wasn't there. The big paycheck that you get in journalism, it's not much, honestly, but it was more than a project manager was getting paid, at least the place I was looking.
Yeah.
But I think that type of role for what my skill set is would be a good fit. I also would not want to be an owner or supervisor of a huge team. So it sounds like you maybe weren't drawn to what so many guys do, which is venture out on your own and try to open your own integration company. Did that never really appeal to you?
Yeah, it actually didn't for a variety of reasons. And interestingly enough, that was kind of what led me eventually to moving over to the vendor side of the business, is that I had gone through so many different roles in the industry and had really identified, what I loved to do. And again, project management was great, immensely challenging role in the integration business. I know anyone out there who's done any project management can relate and likely agrees that, it's really difficult. Every project is so unique. There are different stakeholders involved with every project, different timelines, different personalities. And in that world, unlike, in sort of more tech companies or traditional vendors, a lot of times project managers will have, maybe 1, 2, 3 projects that they're managing. It's not unusual for a project manager in the integration space to be managing up to 10 or a dozen different projects at a time. So there's a lot going on, and I really enjoyed it, but it definitely is, it can burn you out after a while. And so I was trying to figure out sort of what my next move was, and that eventually led me, moving over to the vendor side of the business, which we can, get into more of the details there.
For sure. I was curious. Now, was Harrison your last stop as an integrator working with OneVision?
It was.
Okay. So
you're familiar. And it was a really exciting time at Harrison. I came on right around the time and they're just doing great. I think it was last year they won like the CTA Integrator of the Year award. That was obviously several years after I had left, so I stake no claim and responsibility for that. But I came on at a time when the company was really starting to hit its stride, and they had been doing awesome things before that, obviously, but was, felt fortunate to be a part of a time where really they were establishing themselves firmly as one of the go-to integrators here in the Denver market for luxury residential, and really enjoyed my time there at the company. But yeah, that was my last role as an integrator before I moved over to the vendor side.
And I'll throw in my great joke here. That's always so funny, but you got to work for a Beatle while you were there.
That's
too.
Right, George Harrison.
George Harrison,
exactly.
He's never heard that before, so
yeah.
I always throw that to him. He's a really good guy. He often contributes stuff to the magazine as well. Like working with him. So you and I will continue our conversation. I want to definitely dive into OneVision and ProVision as well. So, but first, let's take a short break.
Do you want superior smart home automation at a great value? Shelly WiFi Relays by Allterco Robotics cover DC to line voltage, allowing you to control lights, outlets, appliances, garage doors, pumps, and much more. There are Shelly sensors and power measurement devices to help you measure temperature, humidity, lux, or motion, and electrical consumption from single wire to 3-phase with neutral. You can use Shelly with a licensed driver for Control 4, Elon, or other premium systems, as well as your customer's existing hub, voice assistant, or any platform that accepts REST, MQTT, or CoAP. Shelly can make IoT very easy. Available now at Blackwire, City Electric Supply, and Worthington, or at shellyusa.com.
Welcome back. I'm Jeremy Glowacki. I'm talking with Jason Griffing, Director of Product at OneVision Resources. Before we really get into OneVision stuff, you were an early podcaster in the space, which I thought was so scary when I knew you were doing that. And I was just becoming a guest once in a while on Resi Week, and we'd cross paths there. And I'm like, man, this guy's like doing it. He's got so many podcasts under his belt. Did that start when you were at Harrison or before when you started doing podcasts?
Yeah, I think that actually started when I was still at VIA. That started, I want to say back in 2014. I just, like you said, recently decided to take a break from that. It was a HomeTech.fm, the HomeTech podcast, and we started that when I was still an integrator, and that was actually part of the reason I decided to take a break. Is that as I had moved over to the vendor side of the business, I'm not working with the technology in the home day to day, hands on, the way that I used to, and that was really kind of the premise of the show. Was myself and Seth Johnson, who's also former integrator but still works in the channel, and we were really just talking about our experiences as home technology professionals and really analyzing a lot of the trends that were going on in the smart home. And if you sort of rewind time in your head, that was around the time that Nest got purchased by Google, and I always half jokingly describe the smart home as, sort of there was the pre-Nest and post-Nest acquisition, sort of like BC and AD, right? It was like everything sort of changed once that happened. And that was really marked in my mind a turning point in the smart home where companies like Google and Apple and Amazon and others like that started entering the space. So a lot of what we focused on in our sort of 6 years of doing that show weekly was what are these trends? What are they about? What do they mean for home technology professionals? What sort of unique lens or take can we put on these things based on our experience as home technology professionals and this growing do it for me and do it yourself trend in the smart home. So yeah, we did that show for about 6 years weekly. I think we put in about 500 or so episodes, if I'm doing my math right. I can't quite recall, but it's still going. And Seth has he's carried the torch forward, and he's still continuing to do the show. Again, you can find it at HomeTech.fm. And yeah, I had my numbers off. He's on episode 367 now. Okay. So I think we were
still at
a lot, 300 and change when I stepped back.
Yeah, we're at 74, and I thought we were really making progress. And then I saw that number. I'm like, yeah, I got a while here to catch up. And
it's one episode at a time, right? And it went by fast. Like it was really great. I loved doing it. Have carried that experience with me into a lot of different areas where I work today. Just getting comfortable behind a microphone, getting comfortable in front of a camera. Those are great sort of experiences for anyone. And I'd encourage anyone who has a passion for any topic to, consider giving it a try, because it really forces you to kind of look at the industry or whatever topic you're interested in a different way. And it forces focus. And I, again, really enjoyed my time doing that.
Yeah, it makes me organize my thoughts a lot more too, and because you're going to be exposed if you don't have your act together coming
Yeah,
in. So
exactly.
it's helpful. So let's switch to your transition there to OneVision. So obviously Harrison must have really felt comfortable, or that service was an important ingredient. And it sounds very basic to say that, but a lot of companies just don't have a handle on how to provide after the installation service and create a plan that they don't end up losing money on, I guess. OneVision steps in and has a great scenario where you can basically outsource that and do triage and things like that. So what is it? What was your experience from the dealer side working with OneVision before you joined the company?
Yeah, so interestingly, we actually didn't work with OneVision at Harrison, but we were in the midst of developing our own service plan there, or
Okay.
service program, I should say, at the time. And one of the big lessons that I learned from doing that is that, on the surface, like, it can actually seem kind of simple to develop a service program. It's like, okay, well, we just need to create a few different service plans, figure out what's going to be offered in each one of those service plans, and then go tell our clients about it and sign them up, and everything will be great. And it's really not until you start peeling back the layers of that onion that you realize, everything is simple until you start, right? And once we sort of dug into that, it's tremendously difficult. There was a lot of decisions we had to make. What do we structure? How many plans do we offer? What do each one of those plans include? How do we price those plans? How are we going to present them to clients? What platform do we want to use to host the landing page? How are we going to process payments? Et cetera, et cetera. And the list goes on. And the difficult thing is that in the typical integrators environment, it's a resource constrained environment. I've never worked at an integration company that didn't have people wearing multiple hats and already spread pretty thin. It's kind of inherent in the business model that you get into that position. And the more successful you are, the more challenging that can sort of become. You almost become a victim of your own success. And so the challenge really was, how do you get somebody to develop this service program who's already got so many other irons in the fire? There's a saying from, I forget his name, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, but it's one of the leaders at Amazon says, the greatest way to stifle innovation is to make it somebody's part-time job. Oh. And the idea there is that, innovating and really reinventing the way that you approach service inside of the walls of an integration company is a very difficult thing to do if you're tasking somebody with that part-time. And so that is where a company like OneVision comes in. And you, of course, alluded to the fact that we do this triage and white label support. And we can talk more about the specifics there, but do want to take the opportunity to emphasize that it's more than that. Like, we help integrators really get their arms around service as a whole in a very holistic manner. And so all of those things that I mentioned before, creating the service plans, figuring out how to price them, what's included in those, how to market them to clients, process signups, manage those subscriptions, market them, all of those things are included in the OneVision platform. It's all turnkey. So we really try to take a holistic look at service and not just look at sort of solutions in a vacuum.
And take me through on this idea of provision. You explained to me that some of the challenges that integrators have faced, even with a program from OneVision available to them, was, when do you bring it up to the client? You have to just really introduce the idea that you're going to need after the sale or after the project's complete. The terminology better than I do, but service, just because of the nature of this technology, it's network based, it's computer based. It's going to have things that need to be updated or adjusted, sometimes rebooted. We're going to do that for you, but we need to get paid for it, I guess. So you need to bring that up at a certain point, so the expectation obvious, right? Is set, right? So take us through some of that, some of those hiccups that maybe occurred with integrators not really bringing that up early enough, and how you're trying to remedy that with a new program.
Yeah. So I draw a lot on my personal experience as a project manager, and when I mentioned I did operations as well, like a lot of that, I got involved in servicing clients after the sale. And what I observed a lot as both a project manager and an operations person in integration companies was that clients were getting very frustrated with the issues that they were having on their systems. And in my experience, a lot of the issues were legitimately frustrating, but a lot of the more emotional aspects of the client experience and that client reaction that we were seeing were due to, in my experience, misaligned expectations. Clients were coming into these systems and they were spending a lot of money on them, and they expected things to just work. And they didn't necessarily have this intuitive understanding that we all do as integrators, that there are lots of reasons why clients can experience problems. And many of those reasons, in fact, I'd argue most of those reasons, have nothing to do with poor workmanship or faulty equipment. It's just the nature of these systems. They're highly interconnected. They're highly dependent on outside factors like internet service and cable providers and servers on other people's servers and things like that. And so as an integrator, you're in this really tough spot where like you're selling these clients very, very expensive high-end systems that they just expect to work. But ultimately, there are a lot of things out of your control that are going to lead to it not always working perfectly. And you're not going to be able to fix that. You're never going to be able to make these systems work perfectly. So what lever do you have to pull on in order to make that client experience better and less fraught with those really high emotion, high frustration incidents? And really what that comes down to is managing expectations. It's one of our core values at OneVision, that communication solves problems. And one of the big things that we see is that clients who have proper expectations set from the very beginning of the relationship tend to have a lot less of those highly emotionally charged reactions. They sort of understand coming into it what they're buying, and they just are better prepared to deal with those situations. So that's always been a core tenet of ours at OneVision, and since the day that we started helping our partners manage what we call sort of the service challenge or the service problem, is that ultimately managing those expectations from the very beginning of the relationship is the key. Now, where does this tie into ProVision? So ultimately, even though that's been a core tenet of ours from the beginning, prior to the release of ProVision, which is our new software program, it's sort of a CRM marketing automation platform. Ultimately, what we found was that we were coaching and guiding partners to have these conversations early in the relationship, from the very first sales call and all the way through the project. But the systems that we were providing weren't necessarily set up to support them in that endeavor. So we can talk again more specifically about what ProVision is and the features that it offers. But ultimately, one of the core tenets of it was, let's get upstream. Let's provide our partners with better tools and better support in order to facilitate those service conversations early and often throughout the client relationship.
Yeah. So you go from just having a conversation, and in the best scenario, your dealer customer, OneVision's dealer customer, gets it and they say, yeah, we'll definitely bring that up early in the process. But then actually giving them some better tools to go through what are the packages from the beginning, and maybe even sign some documentation that says, I agree that we're going to do this early, right? So you're not waiting until the end after maybe the project takes a little longer. Other frustrations occur, and they're like, what? You guys should be done. I don't want to deal with the service. The things that always happen with human beings. But what it needs to be is something early on when everyone's calm, when they're already in a spending mode. Here's what our principles are. Here's how we do it. And here, I need you to pick a package, and we're going to do that. After we're done with you, we'll continue to work with you and provide that kind of service. Which one do you want? So there's a kind of a good summary of how that works.
Yeah, there's a sort of, like you alluded to, there's a window of opportunity at the beginning of the relationship. So if you're waiting until the end of the project to do things like present service, maybe get a credit card gathered if you're offering service plans, get a terms of service signed, anything related to service, if you're sort of shoehorning that into the end of the project, that's a really tough time to do it. Because if you zoom out and think about it from a human perspective, the client is super busy. They're moving into a home. They've probably got half a dozen other contractors vying for their time. They've got movers. It's just a highly stressful environment. And then on the integrator side, it's also a really difficult time because the punch list is growing and not shrinking at that point, and you're stressed out, and you're just trying to get the job buttoned up and get your guys on to the next one, because there's real business needs. In order to keep the business moving, you got to keep the projects moving, and so it's just a really stressful and chaotic time. And so really the time to bring up service and get all of these administrative tasks taken care of, like the terms of service agreement, getting the credit card put on file for the membership, those sorts of things, is really at the beginning of the relationship. Now, we've got an industry full of people who are phenomenally good at selling projects. I mentioned earlier that I only had moderate success as a salesperson. And so I've seen what good salespeople are able to do. And it's really impressive. Like, these are not easy sales to make. They're highly complex and highly custom. And again, we've got an industry full of people that are really, really good at that. But selling service is a different paradigm. And if you're a leader of a company and you want to get service plans implemented into the DNA of your business, you have to remember that selling these service plans is a fundamentally different experience for your sales team. And so we found that it was really important as we developed ProVision to provide our partners with a set of tools that really provide sales enablement and sales support from the beginning of the relationship. So our partners are able to go in from the moment they start a proposal, they'll enter clients into ProVision, the CRM, and that basically initiates a smart, intelligent email automation campaign. That first email goes out. It's very general. It kind of welcomes the client, thanks them for the opportunity to provide them a proposal. But then from a high level, at every critical stage in the client lifecycle from there forward. So when the proposal gets signed, when the project nears completion, when the punch list is complete, all of these critical milestones, we have emails automated going out and sort of instructing the client about what to do, directing them to a sign-up page that lays out their options and provides them with access to educational resources as well. So whatever route you decide to go, again, finding success with service requires that you really start looking at things from the very beginning of the client relationship, and how can we support our sales and project teams in an effort to educate clients throughout every point of the life cycle instead of waiting until the end when, as we pointed out, it's already kind of too late at that point.
That must be such a great addition to a project process, to have that communication automatically going to the client, giving them reassurance. Hey, we're making progress on this project that I'm spending a bunch of money on. And you may be seeing them if it's a retrofit in your own home, and you kind of can gauge that process and progress. But maybe it's a new build and you aren't there every day, and you say, oh, wow, we are moving along on this thing. And you feel like this is the beginning of a service relationship. This is the kind of company I'm going to be working with. And if they want to keep working with me after the project's complete, I get it now. They're good at this stuff. So I could see how that's a really good communication tool to add to the integrators.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'll point out here is, whether you're able to go automate this stuff or not, like the narrative, what is the core message that sort of needs to be planted in the client's head throughout every phase of that life cycle? And that is that service is really important. And ultimately, there's not a company in the industry who's going to go out and tell clients, hey, we really suck at service. Like, nobody's going to do that, right? Everybody's, if pressed on the question, everybody's going to say, yeah, of course we take service seriously, like, obviously. But the point is, most companies aren't going to put that front and center. Most companies aren't going to be proactive and really lean into that topic. The natural tendency is just sort of shy away from it, right? Because you don't want to scare the client off, and that makes a lot of sense. Like, I get that. Talking about service connotes that things are going to break, and that scares clients, and that's tough. So how do you frame that conversation? How do you frame that narrative in a way that gets the point across and manages those expectations without planting undue fear in clients' heads? And really the core themes that we embed in this narrative are that, look, every company out there is going to tell you that service is important, but we take it really seriously. And here's what we've done to make sure that you're well taken care of. We have a comprehensive program in place where clients are able to pick from a variety of different service levels based on your individual needs and desires. We have guaranteed response times. So if you call in 24/7, 365, you're going to get a response within your service level agreement or your SLA. And we back that all up with a written guarantee. And here are the things that you need to do in order to get that locked in. And so again, it's not about sort of scaring clients off or telling them that, painting some doomsday scenario. It's simply about planting the seed in their mind that service is important and that you guys have a structured way of handling it. Here's what that looks like.
Do you encourage your dealers to introduce OneVision as a brand, or is it pretty much presented as their service?
It's entirely white label. Yeah, that's one thing that we feel like makes our offering pretty unique, is that 100% of what we do is invisible to the end user. So OneVision as an entity doesn't even exist. If you're a client of one of our partners, we are completely invisible. So the way that it's framed to clients is, hey, here at Bob's Integration Shop, we've made a big investment and we've taken strides to improve our service offerings, including the expansion of our team to now include a 24/7 365 service team that you can call and get a hold of. And anytime those clients call in, we have all of our systems set up in such a way that we know exactly who's calling in, and we can answer the phone in that partner's name or respond to that email in the partner's name, and keep 100% of what we do completely white label to the client. Our interest is in supercharging the brands of our partners. We want our partners' brands to really stand out in their respective markets. And so a lot of back end work goes into making sure we preserve that white label experience.
I took me years to have my own custom integrator that I worked with, and it really was education for me. And I have a great relationship with them. And I feel like my installer, the guy that managed my project, the original project, is the one that I'm most comfortable with. I would imagine that's a challenge for the idea of outsourcing your service, is that kind of the client's maybe inclination to contact that individual at the custom integrator, as opposed to going through the proper channels. So some of the training is sort of breaking that little umbilical cord relationship, and having it be through this. No, now you're using this app. Stop calling us directly. But you know what I mean? Like, does that cause some challenges sometimes?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult, but I will, the first thing I'll say is that it's not as difficult as most partners think it's going to be when they come on the platform. So what we see over and over again is that the majority of clients adjust very easily, and then you always have a minority of clients who have a little bit of a harder time with that adjustment. But even with those clients, number one, so I think two things that I would point out here. Number one is I think what really all of us want at the end of the day is, it's not so much that we want to talk to an individual person, it's that we want a smooth, friction-free experience and a reliable experience. And the fact, Jeremy, that like you are comfortable with that one particular project manager is just a proxy for Jeremy, like convenience. I like things to be easy when I have an issue, right? And it just so happens that calling and talking to my project manager is the easiest way, because we've built that relationship and he knows me and he knows my home. And so that's great. Well, if we can replicate the fact that that person has that sort of not as close of a relationship, like our support team is never going to have as close of a relationship as you're going to have with that individual, but we certainly have a lot of systems on the back end built to promote familiarity and create that friction-free experience. And then ultimately talking to clients is point number two. And if I were just to sort of role play this for a minute, if I was your integrator, Jeremy, and we were going to this new model, and it was going to be a case moving forward where we needed you to stop calling that project manager and start calling the dedicated service department, the story that I would tell you is basically, Jeremy, we know that you love talking to your project manager, and we've been really happy to be able to provide that for you for years. But we're getting to a point in our industry where it's just really difficult. There are so many moving parts in our systems, and we're a successful company with a lot of projects and a lot of clients out there, and we're just really having a hard time keeping up with that model. And so ultimately, this move that we're making does not mean that your project manager is no longer available to you. He's still here, and you're still going to be able to get a hold of him if the situation warrants that. But ultimately, he's also really busy. He has a family, he's going on vacations, he has a million other projects that he's doing, and we simply cannot guarantee to you that he's always going to be available when in the moment that you need help. What I can guarantee to you is that if you call this new number that we have set up, 24/7, 365, you will always be able to get a hold of somebody. And that person's always going to be there to take care of you. And then again, your project manager is going to be available as an escalation path if that is needed. And so generally, that's how we coach and encourage our partners to have those conversations with that minority of clients who do tend to have a bit of a harder time making that adjustment.
So how has ProVision been embraced and absorbed into your OneVision dealer base so far?
Really great. Yeah, the feedback that we have has been awesome. I sort of alluded to this earlier, so I'll recap quickly and not rehash it. But again, generally speaking, our systems, we've always coached partners to have these conversations early and often, but our systems prior to Provision didn't really support that. So we had mechanisms in place that were really built around the end of the project. And as I alluded to before, the problem that we saw was that end of the project was just really a chaotic time. And we got a lot of feedback from partners that was like, hey, these administrative things that need to be taken care of, getting a credit card on file, finalizing the membership selection, getting the terms of service accepted. We'd be a lot better off if we could get those things taken care of earlier in the relationship. We have clients who have their wallets open. They're already in that frame of mind. They're signing agreements. Everybody's calm, like you said, Jeremy. And so if you guys can build a tool that's going to help us get these things taken care of at the beginning of the relationship instead of at the end of the project, we're all going to be better for it. And so that really inspired us to go dig into this project. And again, the whole idea was let's get upstream. Let's provide our partners with better tools to manage that client relationship, starting at the earliest phase and really planting the seed about service early and often. And the feedback that we've gotten from partners has been great. We're really just getting started. Ultimately, we've got big visions for Provision and a lot that we still want to do there. But the feedback on our initial release has been really great.
Well, great. I don't usually wrap up this way, but I do feel like you've got so many great concepts that need to be covered here so people really understand what good service is all about. Is there anything we didn't touch upon that you'd like to mention before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think just quickly, I spent a lot of time here today talking about taking this holistic view and kind of looking at service through that lens of how do we plant that seed with our clients starting at the beginning. But ultimately, I don't want to completely discount the fact that some element of improving your service offerings to clients does involve zooming in and looking at your specific service operations. So making sure that you're looking at it through that lens. And again, drawing on my personal experience as an integrator, service teams often are left really swimming upstream perpetually. It is, I would argue, one of the most difficult roles in an integration company to be tasked with service, and anything that you can do to better manage client expectations, provide your service team with better access to tools and information. Another part of Provision that we've built is called our Provision Zendesk app. So it's really plugging all of that critical client information right there into the ticketing system so that your frontline support teams have access to that information at their fingertips. So really, again, making sure that your service team has easy access to all of the critical information that they need, that clients are entering that phase of the relationship with clearly managed expectations, and that you're doing everything you can to really listen to your service team and understand the challenges that they're dealing with and taking proactive steps to address those. Because at the end of the day, service is the lion's share of the client relationship. The sales and project phases are finite. The service relationship is infinite. If you do it right, the client's never going to leave you, and they're going to be in that service relationship for a lot longer than they are any other phase. So anything that you can do to make that part of your business more profitable and efficient is going to go a long ways to making your company a better place to work at, and a company that attracts repeat business and referrals, more so than your competitors.
That's a great message. Really, really wise words. Jason, thank you for that. And thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. Thanks for the time.
Jason Griffing is Director of Product at OneVision Resources. You can learn more about the company at onevisionresources.com. And that wraps up today's show. If you're new to Residential Tech Talks, please subscribe to the weekly podcast and consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Also, check out all the latest residential tech news at the magazine's website, restechtoday.com, where you can also subscribe to the bi-monthly print or digital magazine and to our Tuesday and Friday email newsletters. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential Tech Talk, lighting specialist, Residential Tech Talk,
Home automation, smart device, home or smart house.